When I got into my accident last year, I woke up in the hospital, surrounded by my family. I was disoriented, eyes closed listening to the sound of muffled sobs. I'd just come out of a terrible nightmare, filled with metal, darkness, and pressure. Hushed whispers and muffled comments filled my head. My mouth felt like it was filled with cotton. This isn't fair. He was just driving home. Fuck drunk drivers and fuck this. Is he going to be okay? When should he wake up? It's been 15 minutes since, sir. Shouldn't someone be back by now? How long does it take to find the... Fuck what? Where was I? I tried to move, but my body was slow, sluggish. I heard a steady beeping, the soft hum of machines. Could smell antiseptic. Then I heard something terrible. Through the sound of quiet sobs and steady breathing, someone said, "I can't believe they couldn't save his arm." My eyes flared open, the beeping starting to increase in pace. I struggled to focus against the light in the room, in the hospital room. No, 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 no. Please God, no. My family ran over, flurried sounds of movement and a barrage of concern. I ignored them all. I was paralyzed by fear. The seconds that passed felt like hours. I tried to lift my arms. I felt both of them then, heavy but numb. Relief crashed through me hard and swift, like a wave pouring cold liquid down my spine. I sighed, feeling the tension dissipate. Someone was holding onto my hand, gripping it tightly. I looked at my arms, ready to assess what the damage was. I could only see one under the sheet. I began to shake, my brain losing all functioning thought and reason. I turned my head to the right. Get the nurse, get the doctor, get someone. He's finally out, Dashta. My arm was missing. All that was there was a tightly wrapped stump off of my shoulder. A sling compressed it further. It was gone. It wasn't a nightmare. I was awake. No one was holding my hand. The months after were hard. I met with countless doctors, went to physical therapy, talked to my family, had visits from my friends. People came and went like rotating ghosts. Everyone said the same things. You're so strong. I can only imagine what you're going through. I'm so sorry. Thank God it wasn't worse. Even with the bandages, the meds, the exercises, the reality of it didn't settle in the way people said it would. Everyone talked like adjustment was linear, like grief stepped aside neatly with time. But no one warned me about the quiet moments, when I'd wake up reaching for water with a hand that wasn't there, when I'd turn to scratch my shoulder and feel my muscles move, except they didn't, when my brain would swear I could feel the brush of my blanket sliding against fingers I physically no longer had, but most often the sensation that someone was gripping onto my missing hand tightly, to the point where it passed the level of comfort. It felt animalistic, too strong, almost painful. Phantom limb, my doctor called it. Common, normal. It'll lessen with therapy. But it wasn't just a sensation. It wasn't pins and needles or heat or the ache of something lost. It felt real, damn it. Most people tried to skirt around the night it all went wrong. None of them ever asked about the accident itself. There was an assumed belief that because I was hit head on, there wasn't my side. But there was. I remembered it. They said I was unconscious when the paramedics found me, that I never woke up at the scene. Anything I remembered was my brain's feeble way of coping, putting a band-aid over a gaping wound. They're wrong. I remember everything. What really happened that night. Not in sharp frames like a movie, but in sensations. Hot, cold, pressure, weight. The smell of gasoline. The crunch of metal collapsing. The strange, ringing silence that happens right after impact. I remember my head hanging sideways, vision doubled, blurred, blooming in and out like a dying camera lens. I remember trying to breathe, but feeling like my lungs were tied up with wire. And I remember my right arm, pinned, crushed, or at least that's what should have happened. Because when I reached for something, anything, to pull myself up, my hand didn't hit metal. It hit air. Not normal air. Thick, hot, vibrating air. Like touching the space above a stovetop burner. And something in that air touched back. Not lightly. Unmistakable. It grabbed me. Palm to palm. Like it had been waiting. I should have died right then. The paramedics said so later, quietly. In the hallway, when they thought I was asleep. He shouldn't have made it. they whispered. They were right, because in that moment, pressed between two worlds, I felt myself slipping, my body fading while something tugged on my arm from the other side. It wasn't a hand, not really, but it shaped itself like one for me. It was curious, cold, hungry, and when it touched me, I felt everything it was made of. Screams, heat, pressure, and a depth so endless it had a weight to it. A place where noise didn't echo because there was no space left for it to go. Hell isn't fire. It's being compressed until your thoughts can't expand. Millions of lost things piled on top of each other until everything feels like suffocation. I felt that. Through my arm. Through that connection. And the last thing I remember before blacking out wasn't pain. It was the overwhelming certainty that something was leached from me in that moment. When I woke up in the hospital with my arm gone, wrapped neatly, sanitized, bandaged like a textbook medical case, that connection wasn't gone, because I could still feel my arm. Not phantom limb, not nerve misfires. Something else. Something still holding my hand. Nowadays, the majority of friends have stopped checking in. They think I've adjusted. It's been a year. I have my first prosthetic. A detachable piece of flesh-colored silicone, inflexible, cold, clumsy. My family still talks about survival like it's a blessing. Like crawling out of a wreck you shouldn't have lived through is some divine miracle. But over the last year, I've realized something awful. I was never meant to survive that night. I didn't cheat death. I slipped out of something's grasp, and it wants its hold back. It's been changing. The squeezing has hit a peak. The pressure has heightened. The same crushing density I felt in the car. That weight of a place too crowded for space to exist. And when the pressure touches me now, I remember the moment before I blacked out. How that thing groped my essence. It wasn't grabbing my arm. It was grabbing me. The arm was just the only part of me it could reach. Now I understand why the paramedics whispered I shouldn't have made it. Because I didn't escape a drunk driver. I escaped whatever is on the other side of that vibrating air. And it noticed. It's been trying to find me again. Not through the world, but through the connection it made. The one stretched thin when they pulled me from the wreck and cut my arm away to free me. It's just been trying to finish pulling. Over the past month, the sensations have spread. The pressure crawled from the missing wrist to the shoulder, from the shoulder into my ribs, from my ribs to my spine, like it's searching for the rest of what it touched, the rest of what it marked, the rest of me. And tonight it found something. I think it found me. About an hour ago, the room went silent. Not quiet, silent, like the air thickened into molasses and trapped the sound inside it. My ears popped. My vision dimmed at the edges. My breath felt heavy and wet, impossible to breathe. It was the same feeling I had in the car, except back then, only my arm was inside that place. Now the pressure is wrapping around my whole body, not squeezing, claiming, and I can feel it thinking, God help me. I can feel it recognizing me, like a hand patting pockets to find a missing item, and finally feeling the shape it's been searching for. My missing arm isn't what connects us. I am. And as I'm typing this, my vision is starting to double the same way it did that night. Looming in and out like a camera lens drowning in static. The air around me is vibrating. Close. Hot. Too dense to breathe. It's not pulling my phantom hand anymore. It's pulling all of me. Slow. Steady. Certain. Like I'm the overdue half of a bargain I never agreed to. I wasn't supposed to wake up in that hospital bed. It was interrupted. And now that the thing from that place has found me again, now that the pressure is pushing through the walls, the floor, the air, now that it's curling around my spine like a new organ, it didn't take my arm. It left it. As a marker, a claim, a reminder of what it didn't get to finish. My ears are ringing. My bones feel like they're hollowing out from the inside. My chest is tightening, not just from panic, but from something pressing inward, inward. There's no light, just weight, just density, just inside-out gravity. It's here. It remembers me. And this time, nothing is going to pull me back. I think polar bears kind of suck. That was the last text my friend Alex sent me before he went missing around 1 year ago. I think I agree with him. There isn't much to say about the day leading up to his disappearance. We were both normal 19-year-olds living with our parents in Taylorsville, Utah. It was a place in Utah like many others, not necessarily a full-on suburbia, but also not some kind of city or small town. If anything, it was just a subsect of Salt Lake City that had less tall buildings, less fun activities, and more homeless people. It was still a Utah area, however, and of course that meant there was a church around every corner, and religious zealots trying to sell you how to get out of poverty. Neither of us were religious, not at all. I even spent my early childhood and teen years being likely one of the most edgy atheists imaginable, and probably an annoyance to everyone around me. Alex was one of the few people who actually fucked with that sort of speech, and we vibed together being this pair of douchebags. I still look back on those days with a hint of embarrassment, but also longing for those days to return. The day he disappeared, there was a deep, foggy blizzard. The snow had that obnoxious thickness unlike any other. It was the type of blizzard, containing the type of snow that you just immediately understood was going to be tragically ass when you try and shovel it up. I obviously wasn't the praying type, but on these days I did pray to whatever was out there to compel my neighbor to drive his snowblower up the street and just ride around the driveway and sidewalk so that I didn't have to expect the responsibility of cleaning it all up. It was 8:20 p.m. when I received the text out of nowhere. I think polar bears kinda suck. To be honest with you, this confused me at the time. It was entirely brought up out of nowhere, and I had no idea what it meant. I didn't reply, but I did think about that message all day. To me, it just came across as some random thought he sent to me for shits and giggles, but admittedly I should have replied. 3 days later, still having not heard from him, I learned that he had gone missing, and that he was reported as such not even an hour since he sent that message. His parents thought he was in his bedroom. He was not. His window was wide open, and all his belongings besides his phone were left behind. This even includes his jacket. I get he was 19 and all, but that was such extremely odd behavior that even I understand why his parents called the cops so fast. It didn't matter though. He was gone. Not a trace remained. Not even any evidence that he had left footprints at any point. He opened his window and vanished, all in the middle of a blizzard. There were search parties patrolling the whole of Utah for weeks. Each day they got smaller and smaller, until it was only his parents searching for him. I hear they still search for him now, though I quit searching a long time ago. The following time was brutal, and I remember the confusion of the polar bear text eventually built up into a serious stress and anxiety disorder. At some point, multiple hairs of mine even turned white. That messed me up unlike anything I had ever experienced. I can't even imagine the strain this put on his parents. Honestly, what a nightmare. I showed the police the text, and they put out a warning to Taylorsville and the surrounding areas about a loose polar bear. Of course, there was never any evidence of a polar bear attack or any sort of struggle, but I think they just did it as an excuse to get his parents off their backs. Anyway, of course there was never a polar bear found. Now, why does any of this matter? I am pretty confident I have found myself in the exact same situation that Alex found himself in 1 year ago. It's 8:20 p.m. December 4th. There's a similar obnoxious blizzard. I woke up from a nap I took after I got home from work and went to go talk with my dad about politics. I couldn't find him. Same with my mom. Same with my brother. They were gone. I look outside, nothing. There isn't even the faint sound of someone driving in the distance. No sounds of wildlife, nothing. I look at my phone and mind you, it's been at least 5 minutes since I last looked at the time. It is still 8:20. This creeped me out to no end, but I just decided that I couldn't panic. Not in a situation like this. My critical brain just sort of took over, and I entered testing mode. At this point, it should be noted that I study both psychology and astrophysics via 2 different colleges through online classes. I also plan on studying philosophy. When I get what I need from these colleges, I'm going to move out of the United States with the goal of avoiding the debt I accrue from these classes. Is this a stupid idea? Yeah, but I think I know how to cheat the system. Anyway, over the next hour and a half, I quickly confirmed that what was happening was paranormal. Because of this, I did some tests. I watched the snow fall and found that it does not rise, There's a certain level at around 10 inches from any surface where the snow just disappears. I learned that I don't feel pain even after holding a small amount of snow in my hands for an extended period of time. I learned that I still feel some pain, as when I kick my shin up against my parents' coffee table in order to test if I'd feel any pain. I wished I didn't. The sun is still up. Despite it being 8:20, it's still bright outside AT. That point I hadn't seen a polar bear yet. The internet still works, but calling or texting people seems finicky at best. Eventually, I decided to wander Taylorsville to observe more of this strange issue. This hoe is abandoned. There isn't a soul in sight. The exact gerrymandered border of Taylorsville is a void, and it looks like I could walk off the area as if I was jumping off the top of a waterfall. I raided a couple houses and found nothing of note except for extremely phallic paintings and structures all over the walls of one of them. There was also a shotgun. The shotgun has heavy rubber male reproduction organs hanging off the barrel, but nonetheless it's still a shotgun. I'm not any sort of gun nut or anything, but it's a double-barrel shotgun that looks like it's straight out of Call of Duty. I've never fired a shotgun before, but I figured it would be my best defense against a polar bear. The rubber nuts also helped to stabilize my aim when I was pointing it at various furniture. I thought about test firing it, but come on, there was probably a polar bear roaming around somewhere. I have 4 bullets without a clue on how to actually load the thing, but after looking down the barrel with a flashlight, I'm pretty confident it's locked and loaded. I wandered around Taylorsville until reaching the place where my old high school used to be. Instead, what I found was a roughly mile-wide, perfectly flat circle, and directly in the center of that circle stands a polar bear on its hind legs, staring directly at me with its snout pointed at the ground. One of its paws raised up in the air above its head, as if it was waving at me. Upon stepping on the circle, I could hear a faint angelic choir off somewhere in the distance. Before listening to what they had to sing about, I stepped off the circle, and the sound ceased. I've been writing this post in a house just outside of the circle. I can see the polar bear from my window. It has not moved. I am pretty confident that thing is some kind of god, and if I get too close to it, it's gonna rapture my stupid ass. Thinking about what Alex would have done in this situation, I know he probably walked to it. I already know the result on what happened as a result of that event. Another reason as to why I don't want to get close is just because in general polar bears fucking suck. I've since been debating on what to do with the shotgun, because after hearing that choir, I doubt a shotgun shell or 2 is going to hurt that thing. And if it does, it's a polar bear. I thought about shooting myself, but seeing as I actually feel pain when it's sharp and concentrated, I don't think that would do any good. I've thought about jumping off the edge, but there's too many unknowns in that situation. I'm going to have to do a lot of tests on what may happen to objects thrown in the void. Surviving here in the cold with the constant 820 is also an option, but I don't know. That's pretty much the main reason on why I would even make a Reddit post in this situation, hoping that it just goes through without issue. I want some feedback. What should I do in this situation? I'll answer any questions as soon as I can. It pressed down on the street, heavy and wet, swallowing every sound around me. When I raised my hand and that yellow taxi appeared, I didn't see it arrive. It just slipped out of the fog, like it had been waiting right beside me the whole time. The car was old. Not classic, old. The paint was cracked, the chrome didn't reflect anything, and when I opened the door, a thick smell of damp leather, stale sweat, and decades-old cigarette smoke hit me like a wall. The radio was playing some broken jazz track full of static, almost like the speakers were breathing instead of working. To the station, I said. The driver didn't answer. His hat covered half of his face, and the part one could see wasn't looking at me. It was looking past me, like he expected someone else to climb in behind me. The taxi started with shudder. As we moved, I realized I didn't recognize a single street. The buildings looked older than they should have been, with cracked facades and windows covered by curtains that moved even though there was no wind. It felt like we were driving through a part of the city that didn't exist anymore, or shouldn't. When we stopped, I pulled out my card. The driver frowned like I'd handed him something rotten. What the hell is this? We only take cash here. I found a few coins in my pocket and handed them over. He took them slowly. turning his head just enough to speak in a low voice. "Welcome to a reality that ain't for everyone." Before I could ask what he meant, the taxi slid back into the fog and vanished without a sound. The station loomed in front of me. Not big, but wrong. The proportions looked slightly off, like the building leaned forward a little. The broken windows weren't reflective. They were just dark, like empty sockets leading to someplace deeper than a room. As soon as I stepped through the entrance, a cold draft wrapped around my legs. It wasn't normal cold. It felt like it was coming from the ground itself. The air smelled of damp, rust, and something else, like a room that's been locked away from light for years. Inside, the silence wasn't complete. There was a low hum, faint and distant, and I couldn't tell if it came from the walls or my own ears. Every step echoed with a delay that didn't match the sound I made, like the building was repeating it from someplace deep below the floor. I walked toward the ticket booth. The man behind the glass stood perfectly still, so still that I wasn't sure he was alive. I tapped the frame. He lifted his head with a stiff, unnatural movement. His skin was grayish, his lips cracked, and his eyes dull. A dark line of saliva hung from the corner of his mouth. When he stood up, he released a low growl that scraped the air. Then the glass buckled under his weight. A freezing hand, much stronger than it should have been, clamped onto my wrist. He pulled me toward his open, broken mouth. His jaw snapped with a practiced, mechanical rhythm. He tried to bite me. I elbowed him in the face. The sound was wet and sickening. We fell into the broken glass. His breath smelled like rot, thick enough to sting my eyes. His snapping jaw searched blindly for my skin. My hand found a piece of metal on the floor, and I slammed it against his temple. His grip loosened. I didn't look back. I just ran. But the silence behind me was gone. Now I heard dragging, scraping, uneven breathing. Shadows shifted where there shouldn't have been any. Figures started coming out of corners I swore had been empty. Their movements were wrong, unbalanced, like they weren't used to carrying their own weight. Some dragged their feet. Others walked too quickly, like they were remembering how to move. And every single one of them turned toward me at the same time. Not randomly. They recognized me. I backed away, and the echoes multiplied. More footsteps, more breathing, coming from tunnels farther away, all joining into a rhythm that made my skin crawl. I spotted an old train car sitting dead on an abandoned track. It wasn't safe, but it was the only barrier I had. I ran, jumped inside, slammed the door shut, and wedged a metal bar across the handles. Then I crawled under the seats and tried to quiet my breathing, but my lungs were shaking. The banging started immediately. Fists, palms, nails dragging along the metal. Bodies hitting the sides with dull, heavy thumps. Each impact made the whole car shiver. Then the light went out. Not suddenly, slowly, like something darker than darkness was sliding into the corners, filling the gaps, moving under the seats toward me. And the deeper the shadow got, the colder the air became. A low, wet murmur rose from the metal floor. Not one voice, many, layered on top of each other. Every time I inhaled, the murmur shifted, matching my breath, getting closer. I grabbed my right arm. The pain was still there, a sharp, misplaced throb. I hadn't wanted to look, but the shadow was coming with such slow, deliberate intent that I needed to know before it reached me. I rolled up my sleeve. No bite, no deep tear, but scratches. Thin, red, raised lines, skin scraped by cold, desperate fingers. They didn't bleed. They burned. Was that enough to infect me? I didn't know. No one could know anything in a place like that. But as I stared at those uneven marks, I felt something pulsing beneath them. A slow tingling rising toward my elbow, like a current that didn't belong to me. I tried to tell myself it was fear, shock, adrenaline, anything human. But the doubt tore right through me. If the disease could pass through those scratches, if those nails dragging across my skin were enough, then maybe I wasn't hiding from them anymore. Maybe they were just waiting for me to stop being me. The zombies don't stop. The metal bar is starting to bend, and I can't find a way out. Not many people know that there's a dead painter in my backyard. It's true. It's something I tell my dinner guests when they have the capacity to visit, though this prompts them to collect their children away from the backyard beneath, which has buried a dead man, and scurry off into the night. Not a foot ever set back onto my property. It seemed. Not for many years. I once had a child come back to my property after he had grown, and he asked why his parents had collected him so hastily and prevented him from ever coming back to see me again. I told him what I already told you, and what I am about to tell you. There's a dead painter in my backyard, and you had trapped upon his grave, and the painter never wanted anyone to do that, because he had made his grave and gravestone himself, molded from his paints and paint brushes into a large spire, protruding from the dirt, before which he dug a large hole, then laid himself down in the hole and did himself in and away. And that spire is fragile, strong against the storm, but brittle at the touch of man, no matter how much of a gentle countenance you may bear unto it. That weekend, the weekend he buried himself, there was a torrential storm, and the elements blanketed the painter with the dirt he had scrounged to the side of his grave. There were 2 mounds of dirt, one to its right, one to its flank, to account for the 6 feet of earth removed to make the painter's gate to hell, 6 feet and 2 miles, and they both individually seemed higher than 3 feet. They looked more like a stubby 4. The painter had been dead 4 days by that time which conditioned his body to become a loose assortment of rotting skin that decayed into a viscous, liquefied form when the rain struck it. By the time the dirt covered his whole body, only his legs, covered in brown fancy pants, had not been torn of its skin and turned into a skeleton. No one knew of the painter's corpse in my backyard except his mother, who had seen him dead in the hole and consequently lost every fiber of her sanity, never bringing herself to go back outside and bury her baby boy properly. And it was none other but I who was responsible for sending the poor thing to the sanitarium down by the port. She, confined behind whitewashed walls, let God and Mother Nature do the thing she was too mad to do and bury her son. When time came around to pass the house on, empty houses made great ghosts after all. I bought it for myself from the painter's mother for nothing more than meager pennies on the dollar. Too much of a pittance to the woman to definitely not serve a profit, but enough to make a considerable chip in my pecuniary goings-on. After such, I did the most humanly thing possible and fathered 5 children within the house, one for a different wife. None of them, children and wife, stuck around much long after I told them, "Honey, we've got a dead painter in our backyard." I haven't seen the children they took with them to wherever they chose to go. Haven't seen them in up to 22 years. Their lives are much too gone now to be mine to see. I never went outside to unbury the mound that now bulges slightly in my backyard, take steel to the little rise that takes form near my petunia garden, as if the earth itself sprouted a low pimple near a flush of beard. It is not enough of a mound to bother flattening it, though proves enough of a nuisance that I do trip and fall over it as I see more time pass and kill my bones. The painter was a friend. I cherished him more than his own father, a wretched bastard who made him a bastard. Anyway, I have died enough that I cannot do anything myself anymore, without hired assistance, because that pecuniary hole still hasn't entirely closed, still bleeds. Look out to the spire. It's faded, its color's now gray and dim, out by the tree line. It's conspicuous enough, with enough of a foot into the past that, with a little strain from easement, you can see it, pronounced against dark bark. Beneath it, though offset in front of it a foot, are the remains of a dead painter, a dead friend. I believe that if you dig up his bones, there in the dirt they will be, and absorbed into the dirt will be all the paint he consumed to kill him. When I'm dead and gone, you can go and unbury him, if you so like. I regret enough not burying him, that I would never unbury him consciously, never as long as I am driven by my remaining moral fiber. When I give up this house, you will be the only person to decide for my painter friend. Do you leave him to peace, or do you do the proper thing? Wake him up, violate his home space, give him God's proper burial, God's proper send-off, though his slumber has been 50 years going. Now for me, think of it if you must, but never enact upon it. If you are so compelled, just go over and stick a sign in the ground, stick a knife in his door, Or paint over the faded, painted words of the painter's name up on the spire, around into its back, if you so wish to demean his masterpiece. Repaint this house. Paint my coffin red before you paint it blue. But you don't repaint the strokes of an artist's signature. You let it pronounce its worth, and let its worth pronounce it. If it has worth, it will stay and keep its eye on us. If it has none, then I believe you can muster enough intelligence to find out what happens thus. And two, when you bury me far from my friend, next to my mother, not my father or my children. Both have lived lives I don't want to hear about and am not obligated to know anymore. In heaven, I would still like to rest my head on my mother's lap and let out 70 years a sigh. I do not know what compelled the death of my friend. I don't want to meet him in heaven. I want his spire and his memory, not never, the truth that led to either. I've spent most of my life exploring places people forgot existed. Decaying malls, abandoned schools, shuttered hospitals. In particular, I had a penchant for abandoned honeymoon resorts, the kind of places where the air smells like mildew and forgotten memories. Whether you call it a hobby, obsession, or trespassing, I call it work, or as other people call it, urban exploration. I'm a photographer, and while I don't mean to brag, I have to say I'm a pretty good one too. Photographing these places that have decayed past their prime and posting them online with factoids about their history has gotten me pretty far. Last weekend, I went to the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania, more specifically, to the old Penn Hills Resort. My parents honeymooned there in the early 70s, and I've only seen it in their faded Polaroids. A mirrored lobby that reflected ceiling chandeliers from every angle, heart-shaped tubs in every suite, a wedding bell-shaped pool outside. I'd never asked them much about it. Nostalgia wasn't their language, but it was mine. So I packed up my gear and headed out to scout my next project. The hotel had closed in 2009, but was dying long before that. Only a few short years later, it was already being swallowed by the forest. Windows boarded up, vines crawling over the brickwork like anxious fingers. According to local rumor, the kind you hear from gas station clerks who never leave town and locals who grew up around the area, the place had shut down after a mysterious string of incidents. Guests disappearing, staff quitting in droves, and a series of accidents in the pool area that no one wanted to talk about. I didn't believe in curses or ghosts. I believed in wood rot and mismanagement. It was dipping into late afternoon by the time I headed out the door, so I knew I'd get some golden hour lighting if I didn't hit traffic. Driving down to the Poconos, it's easy to see why it's been a honeymoon destination for decades. It feels like you're driving right into a storybook. Wild deer and small brooks are all accoutrements to the mountainous dreamscape that makes you feel like you're in another time, stuck in the sweet spot of Americana glory people always talk about. I parked my aging RAV4 on a side road and walked along the sprawling display of weeds and overgrowth until I found the remnants of pavement cracked and weathered. Well, here it is, I thought to myself as I approached the vine-engulfed structure. The main building was nearly destroyed, with most of it falling in on itself, but still traversable. The surrounding buildings like the ice rink, suites, and rec center were in mostly good shape. I thought I'd photograph some heart-shaped tubs, maybe a champagne tower, and some vintage signage. Walking inside the first set of suites, the smell hit me first. Wet pine needles, rotting carpet, mildew, and something faintly metallic. I cracked a grin. Classic abandoned building perfume. I should have known better than to be alone, but I had my camera gear, my flashlight, a switchblade, and a pair of gloves. The basic uniform of someone who pretends he's prepared for anything. The mirrored ceiling reflected everything, but it was cloudy with dust, so the reflections were warbly. The carpet had turned a grim shade of brown instead of its original rich crimson. I thought to myself, the last people to care left 2 decades ago. I explored the first few suites slowly, looking for forgotten treasures and peeking out the windows at the endless forest outside. Room numbers were painted in curling gold script on each door. 101, 102, 103, some locked, most warped. I finally found 107, the suite my parents had stayed in. The door hung slightly ajar. That wasn't odd. Vagrants, other urbexers, and bored local kids were notorious for doing what I was doing, some even overstaying their welcome or trashing the place. The bed frame was intact though the mattress sagged like it had given up. The heart-shaped tub still gleamed faintly under the grime. I crouched and photographed everything, narrating to myself like I was giving a tour. Noticed the peeling wallpaper, faint scorch marks on the carpet. Architectural optimism meets entropy. I chuckled at my own jokes, trying to calm the rising awareness that this place was too quiet. Penn Hills had a different air to it. Then I heard it, a faint thump, like someone closing a box upstairs. I froze, flashlight sweeping the room, heart tightening. My first thought, animals. Raccoon. Squirrel. Maybe even a raccoon-sized squirrel. My second thought, human. That's when the wood in my head started muttering warnings. Classic horror tropes I'd read so many times. Don't investigate alone. Don't split up. Don't open closed doors. In that moment I realized cliches are only cliches because they have been experienced so many times and are rooted in truth. The stairwell reeked of mildew and dust, and every step made the old wood groan. As I moved to what I thought was the second set of suites next door, I noticed a corridor of doors. Most were closed. A couple had broken locks and gaping holes. Then I saw it. An office door with staff only carved faintly in peeling paint. These were rooms used for meetings and offices, probably from when Penn Hills tried to turn into a conference center when the honeymoon business was going belly up in the late 90s. The thumping was coming from there. I approached slowly, flashlight shaking slightly. I peeked through a crack. The room was small. Desks, filing cabinets, yellowed papers scattered everywhere. In the corner, a man crouched over a desk, moving methodically through piles of paperwork. He was wearing a janitor's uniform. His hair was stuck to his head, like a bird that had just hatched from an egg. His body was thin and his limbs long. He looked like he belonged to the hotel's first crew. He didn't look up. He didn't even seem aware I existed. Then I noticed what he was holding. A stack of Polaroids. Pictures of me entering the building. Me exploring the lobby. Me looking cluelessly around the first set of suites. Unaware I was being watched. I froze. He murmured numbers, counting them like money, calculating something I wasn't meant to understand. I stepped back. My flashlight slipped. A metallic clang. He turned his head slowly. Eyes wide around dark pupils. His lips stretched into something like a smile revealing graying gums and yellow teeth, sending a chill down my neck. "I've been waiting," he said. Not malicious. Matter of fact. I ran. Down the stairs, through the lobby, across the overgrown driveway. I didn't stop until my car was in sight. Doors locked, engine roaring. My hands shook, adrenaline buzzing with every heartbeat. Back home, I replayed everything in my head. I wanted a rational explanation. Maybe a security guard who never left and had a sick sense of humor. But the photos were too many for someone just trying to catch me trespassing. And if that's all he wanted, why didn't he call the police? I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't stop thinking about being watched and knowing he could have gotten to me if he wanted to. What was his intention? After all, he was just a man. Patient, methodical, utterly unshaken by the moral weight of what he was doing. I called my parents the next day. The hotel, they remembered it as charming, idyllic, a blur of champagne and laughter. They remembered the staff as friendly and helpful. They remembered nothing unusual. I didn't tell them about the man or the pictures or the way he had been waiting. As the days went on, I couldn't shake the feeling. I was still being watched. At night when I was lying in bed or brushing my teeth at the bathroom sink, I'd feel the gaze of the unknown stranger somewhere behind me. It was the strange feeling you get when you know someone is staring at you without turning around. I dismissed it as paranoia. Eventually life went back to normal, and I almost forgot about the whole ordeal. Almost. Weeks later I got a letter. Brown envelope. No return address. No address on the front at all. Like someone placed it directly into my mailbox. Inside, a Polaroid of me standing in my apartment kitchen, looking down at a cup of coffee. From what I understand, Penn Hills isn't haunted. There's no ghost waiting for you in the heart-shaped tub. There's a man, patient, observant, careful, waiting for the right moment to catch you off guard. I don't know what he wants or how long he's been there, but I do know this: every abandoned place I've explored, every cracked floorboard I thought I was safe on, every right comment I made about horror tropes, it was all irrelevant when face to face with a terrifying encounter like this. It doesn't need to be supernatural to be horrifying. He's just sitting in there, or maybe somewhere else, taking photographs. Be careful where you trespass. He might be waiting for you. Trigger warning, blasphemy. It's been a while, Joan. I was starting to think you don't need therapy anymore. Joan looked at me like she'd just smelled sour milk. She clearly didn't think she did. I was surprised when my secretary told me she was here. I considered her one of my greatest successes as a therapist. I don't, she replied forcefully. You've really helped me a lot the last 3 years. I'm a more confident, less fearful person than I was when we started. But I've been having these dreams. About the entity. The entity? She nodded. Yes. You have to say it with your whole chest, though. The entity. It's disrespectful not to. Right. The entity. Yes. Always say it like that. I've learned a lot about higher powers this month. While talking to the entity. They're very particular about how they're addressed. Of course. These dreams you've been having about the entity. You believe they are real. I know they're real. Have you been taking your medication, Joan? Yes. I have. No need to get testy, I said quickly. She was glaring at me. The question had come out less tactfully than I'd hoped, but she'd had issues with being around other people before, not delusions or hallucinations. Whatever this was, it was new. I added, I was just asking. Tell me more about the entity. She sighed. I could tell this wasn't easy for her. No one was forcing her to be here, so it had to be important for her to share it. It talks to me, she said. Tells me things. I don't think I can handle all it's telling me on my own. That's why I came to talk to you. That's what I'm here for. I don't know where to start. Is it good? Bad? Evil? Those terms don't really apply to the entity. It has no equal. Nothing in all realities comes close. The often used example of a human taking a walk and unknowingly trampling hundreds of ants, ending them, is closer to the gods in relation to us. The gods would be the ants in relation to the entity. I looked at her silently. Sometimes it helped to respond with silence when patients made extraordinary claims. She didn't flinch. I said, now that you've got that bit of blasphemy out the way, are your dreams affecting your sleep? No. They can be unsettling, but I rarely wake up screaming. I see. You only see the entity in your dreams. Yes. So it's in your head. Her face twitched. I was off my game today. I'm usually more sympathetic with my patients. She said, I told you it's real. I nodded softly. Where is it? To tell you where it is, I have to give you perspective. I'm all ears. She took a breath to compose herself, then said, we live here on Earth. Last I checked, yes. And the Earth is just one of 8 planets in our solar system. There are also dwarf planets, asteroids, moons, and comets. Yes, and our solar system is just one of billions, hundreds of billions of star systems in our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. Yes. And the Milky Way galaxy is just one of 2 trillion galaxies in our observable universe, all with billions of star systems of their own. Yes, and our observable universe is just 3% of our entire universe, with light from all the galaxies we can't see never having reached us since the birth of our universe. I don't know if that's scientifically proven. Did the entity tell you that? Stay with me, Doc. We'll get to the entity. Okay, go on. Our universe, in its entirety, is held in a locket worn by God. The man upstairs, he, capitalized H and E, lives in the realm of the infinite gods. Again, I took a second to just look at her. There was certainty in her eyes. Certainty in a belief I was sure no one else believed. Infinite. I asked. She nodded. Yes, if you started counting them today, You'd still be counting when our universe dies, trillions of years from now. I know what infinite means. I just thought there was only the one. She smiled. Her eyes were intently focused on me. She had no doubts about what she had just said. Of course you did, Doc, she uttered. If it makes you feel better. You don't have to acknowledge the others if you don't want to. Anyway, when addressing him, all the letters should be capitalized to show respect. He sends everyone who does it differently straight to hell. No exceptions. My turn to nod. I'll pray for forgiveness and do it correctly from now on. You should. The entity tells me hell is not a nice place. And also, the locket worn by God is not unique. All the other gods have them, all with universes of their own. So there's a multiverse of sorts. God's locket is special, however, for 3 reasons. Very few of the infinite gods have created universes with such perfect physical laws that they remain stable for billions of years. Even fewer have created ones where galaxies can form without immediately collapsing in on themselves. And only 3 of the infinite gods have created universes so perfect that conditions are just right, not just for life, but sentient life like us. They are God, aka the man upstairs, the Lord Almighty. After eons of hard work, he was so impressed with his creation that he made the only sentient beings in his universe, us, flawed, not perfect, just to spice things up. The goddess, she insists on the first letter of her name always being capitalized. She, her the queen. Her universe is full of sentient life, but none of them are close to our level. And lastly, the Buddha. He's the only human to ever ascend to the realm of the gods. He's a very chill god. He doesn't care how you write his name, or even if you mispronounce it. The point is you tried. That's all he cares about. This is a lot of information. Her brow furrowed. You tired, Doc? Need a break? Want to take a walk to clear your thoughts? Calm your nerves? Believe it or not, Joan, I'm also a person. This is a lot of information to take in all at once. I'm struggling to keep up, but I'm still listening. She looked at me, perplexed, as if surprised a therapist could admit a weakness. Some of my clients think I'm superhuman. It's often advantageous in my line of work. It's easier for people to look for help from someone they think is infallible, but I've found it can calm them down quickly to give them a dose of reality. And Joan needed to calm down. Good, she said uncertainly. She looked at the floor for a moment. Continue, I said. Her eyes regained their focus when she looked back at me. She felt she had to tell someone about this. She nodded to herself and said, Okay, the other gods are jealous of the 3. Worst among them, Lucifer, Satan, the devil. All his names must always be written in lowercase, for maximum disrespect. His universes are always the laziest, most pathetic of all. So he plots against the greatest, that of the man upstairs, God. He plots especially against us, humans, God's greatest creation. No other god has ever created anything that comes close to our level of intelligence and self-awareness. So Satan wants to destroy us. God is his superior in every way. All Satan's plots have failed. So far. Anyway, the realm of the infinite gods is held inside a telekinetic ball, powered by the entity. Finally, what does the entity look like? She shrugged. I don't know. I only see the space around it in my dreams. I'm not meant to see it. The entity is the first being, the first consciousness, the first intelligence, created by none, creator of all. It is all-knowing, all-seeing, omnipresent. Not even the gods can comprehend its true size, and it speaks to me in my dreams. What does the entity say? It says a lot of things. I'm aware of the privileged position I'm in, that I'm receiving its wisdom. It has told me that the Buddha had it right. Food is the simplest form of happiness. Other things that can bring happiness are too fleeting and unreliable. The entity tells me to eat cake, pie, fries, burgers, steaks. I noticed you've gained a few pounds since I last saw you. I thought it wise not to mention it. Eating is good for everyone, but I don't think we should overindulge. Joan smiled, shaking her head. That's what the man upstairs says. But HE's got it wrong. The entity says we shouldn't deny ourselves our sustenance. If you eat cake and ice cream all day, every day, you'll be happy all the time. And perpetual happiness brings enlightenment. Look where the Buddha ended up. I thought he reached enlightenment after years of intense meditation. That was just half of it. The other half was delicious food. The entity told me, "You should try it." I pretended to consider it. To be honest, the idea wasn't unappealing. My lunchtime meals tend to be on the healthy side, often unappetizing. A nice treat every now and then couldn't hurt. I'll tell my secretary to order me a whole bag of chocolate chip cookies for lunch. And there are 20 cookies in the bag. Yes, and a packet of marshmallows, 2 hot dogs, and 5 slices of avocado toast. Joan beamed at me. That's the spirit. I see a smile on your face. It's already working. I laughed. I really was going to try. Just for today. Indeed, I said. But you said the entity told you something unsettling. Joan's mood soured. She nodded. Yes, the entity also told me that the devil will eventually succeed.